to make sure.
Hi, and welcome into this week's edition of AFMC TV. I'm your host, Michelle Rupp. We're so glad you're joining us. We are starting off today with our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Chad Rodgers. Dr. Chad, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy Valentine's. We are,
Okay.
of course, this is the first time we've seen each other this year, but we are just a few days away from Valentine's. And what is it that we are seeing all over the place? We are seeing chocolate and red wine.
I know, two of my favorite things, so happy to talk about these things. So, yeah, I guess we're kind of into the heart season, being that it's
Yep.
Valentine's Day, and talking about how to prevent heart disease.
Right.
I think a very popular conversation around, red wine and chocolate is always good. Um, so, a couple of things to think about. Certainly we don't advocate for people as physicians just drinking to lower their cholesterol or improve their heart disease. But
Sure.
if you are going to have a glass of wine, red wine is a really good choice. A lot of the things that go in the production of red wine help increase sort of the antioxidants that sort of help prevent heart disease. Not only does it help prevent inflammation, but it can also help prevent the bad cholesterol in your blood, but also increase the good cholesterol in your blood. So if you're gonna, I mean, we all like to treat ourselves to a glass of wine. So if you're gonna have a glass of wine, red wine is a good choice in moderation.
Yes.
So,
I heard a cardiologist say one time, if you're used to drinking red wine, um, then okay, you can have a glass of red wine. If you are not used to drinking, this is not me telling you it's okay to start.
exactly.
So there are some benefits then to red wine as it relates to our heart. What about chocolate? My most favorite is dark. The darker it can be, the happier my taste buds are. What's the rule on chocolate, or is there a rule, so to speak, on chocolate?
No, I'm with you. I mean, I love dark chocolate and I love dark chocolate desserts. And if I'm going to have something, that's really what I want.
Hmm.
So, just think about your overall general health and your kind of choices and foods and stuff like that. If you're going to have dessert, then think about dark chocolate. It has a lot of really good benefits. Again, it's one of those things that kind of helps reduce some of the bad cholesterol. It also has some antioxidants in it, flavonoids. You'll hear a lot of that talk. Sort of helps prevent inflammation. Instead of getting, the high fructose corn syrup cookie out of the refrigerator, just consider, sort of a small piece of dark chocolate. And the other thing about dark chocolate is it's very satisfying.
Yes.
It's not like you have to eat the whole bowl of ice cream. If you just eat like a couple of bites of dark chocolate, especially if you think about doing like dark chocolate with some almonds, which also have good antioxidant effects, is a really good way to, number one, control your calorie intake, control your sugar intake, and also give you that kind of satisfying dessert need that we all have, especially this time of year when it's cold and dark and and we are looking for comfort food.
Yeah. You've seen those bars of dark chocolate at the grocery stores, and those bars could be $2.50. I mean, I'm not talking about a Hershey bar here, but
Right.
those dark chocolate bars, and you can break them off, and sometimes maybe three little squares is more than enough to satisfy, particularly if you are going real dark. Is there a percentage? Sometimes those bars will say it's 50% dark or 65 or 82. Is there a percentage to stay in, or just go as dark as you can handle?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point because milk chocolate, is very low in cocoa, and that's really where you get the kind of antioxidant effect. It's also really popular in our culture for milk chocolate. Hershey's Syrup is really low in cocoa. So, and white chocolate has really low levels. So, really looking at those high levels. So, you're looking at a 75 to 80%, amount of cocoa. Sometimes that's not a lot palatable to a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But adding a little bit of something that's a little bit sweeter sometimes helps bring that down for people. But yeah, you want to go for those higher percentages of cocoa because that's really where you get the greatest impact and and sort of that anti-inflammatory effect.
Okay, that's good. So, what else? What else is good for our heart?
Yeah, so we hate to hear it. I mean, it's fun to talk about red wine and chocolate, right? But we don't want to hear it. But we all know it's true. Is that good traditional exercise and
Mhm.
good eating are really essential to good heart health. So around eating, I mean, there are a lot of really good evidence around the Mediterranean diet where you're sort of high fish and olive oils and low sugar vegetables and fruits to kind of help promote good heart health and prevent vascular disease, which is what we're really trying to prevent. But it's been hard the last couple of weeks. It's been cold and dark and the days are short, but we all need to get out, get some fresh air, do some walking, even just walking, 10, 20, 30 minutes a day, have really good impacts on heart health and are really essential to just sustaining good health.
I would think too, even in the winter months, it when we have a sunny day, sit out in the sun. That has to not only lift your mood, um, but also have some. You've got your vitamin D effects, and it will kind of start to begin to make you feel better. Might not necessarily protect your heart, but it'll put you in a little bit better of a mood, I would think.
Yeah, I think sunlight has a lot of good effects. Of course, wear your sunscreen, but you getting out and getting some good vitamin D. I think it also is really good for the brain and helps kind of increase levels of chemicals in your brain that improve mood, that make you feel more awake, make you feel more attentive. So finding time to kind of get out when it is sunny, looking ahead at the weather, but even on a cloudy day, just getting out and getting some fresh air, and you do get some vitamin D even through the clouds on a cloudy day. But try, of course, when it's cold and rainy, it's hard to get out there. But finding a time, like you said, looking ahead, thinking about your week, finding some time to get out and do that walk or run or bike,
That's right.
depending on what
Just
you
be
enjoy.
outside.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of advancements that obviously that have been made in where the heart's concerned and how early we can detect heart disease. And then if you do have heart disease, the advancements that can kind of help prolong life. But at the end of the day, does it really just boil down to simple as diet and exercise, don't smoke, to really set yourself up heart wise to be in a good place?
Yeah, and I think thanks for bringing up smoking because that is so important. People smoking is such a high risk activity for vascular disease, but this is where preventive care really comes in strong. I mean, getting into your doctor for that yearly exam, having them listen to your heart, having them check your blood sugar and your cholesterol, making things sure that are normal, and even very young people need to make sure that this is part of their kind of annual routine. Certainly, if you have a high risk of heart disease in your family, you need to get in earlier and sooner and maybe more frequently. But that is really where preventive care comes in so early. And there are medicines, that sometimes you need to start in order to help with your blood sugar and help with your cholesterol that will actually, improve your heart disease. Not as much fun as wine and dark chocolate, but very beneficial and very safe. A lot of studies around these medications to help control those things.
Let me ask you, going back to the smoking, and of course, we know the impact that smoking can have on the heart. Any studies yet or information about the effects of vaping and what that might have on the heart? Vaping is still fairly new to the scene, so there might not be a lot of information out there about that. But I'm curious.
Yeah, certainly a growing body of evidence, especially as more people move from smoking to vaping, thinking that it's a safe alternative, and it's really not. It still has a lot of inflammatory effects on the lungs. Still contains nicotine, could contain other things that cause inflammation in the body, and it's really that inflammatory process that leads to vascular disease.
Yeah.
I mean, cholesterol is certainly part of that, but anything that you do that sort of increases inflammation in your body is going to increase your risk for not just heart disease, but for cancer, for diabetes. So, vaping is not really a safe alternative to smoking. And I think there's, growing body of knowledge. And actually, and sometimes it can be dangerous
Yeah.
depending on, the person. We've seen a lot of, I mean, my area is pediatrics. And so we've seen
Sure.
kids that had significant lung disease related to vaping. So, not a safe alternative.
Not at all. Not at all. All right. Well, Dr. Rogers, thank you for
Yeah.
joining us today and talking about that there are some benefits to dark chocolate and red wine as it relates to the heart. Have a happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day to you as well.
JJ Mayo joins us now from JM Wellness. JJ, thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here, Michelle.
So we're keeping with this theme. We're in Heart Month. We're in the month of February, and one of the things that we need to be aware of that can indicate whether or not we're having heart disease or potential heart problems is our blood pressure. So let's talk. Let's talk blood pressure 101. Very basics.
Right.
What are the numbers?
Yeah.
What do they mean?
I understand. There's a lot of confusion because, people will, and I get this question all the time. People will come to me, they'll have gone to their doctor for their physical, but they look at the numbers, they're like, what do all these mean? And so knowing your numbers, I think is going to be really important. And blood pressure is the great place to start. When you look at blood pressure, it's what it means. It's the pressure in your arteries. And remember, those arteries are part of a bigger picture of what we call our cardiovascular system, where you've got a pump, which is the heart, you got the pipes, which are the vessels, and then you got the fluid, which is the blood. And so, what having high blood pressure means, it means that the pressure in those arteries are greater than what they should be. And that's important because when we have too much pressure, it affects the heart. It makes it work harder. It affects things like smaller vessels, like your kidneys, and you end up with kidney disease, or it affects small vessels in your eyes, and you start to have vision problems. It affects your brain. Pressure being too high can lead to strokes and heart attacks and all these things, these negative consequences. But when you look at what blood pressure really is, I mean, it's just having too high pressure in your system. And most of the time when we measure pressure, we do that at the doctor's office, or you can do it with an automated cuff, right? Where what they do is they put this, and people don't understand how to even measure it, right? What are they doing, right? They put this contraption on your arm, right? But what they do is they pump up this little valve, and they increase the pressure in that cuff so that the pressure in the cuff is greater than the pressure in your artery, right? This brachial artery. And they
Gotcha.
use a stethoscope, right? They put a stethoscope on your arm. And so as they release the pressure, what ends up happening is at some point the pressure in the arteries are greater than the pressure in the cuff. And so blood shoots through. And that's what you're listening, that's what the practitioners are listening to. They're listening for those sounds, right? And so what ends up happening is that blood that comes through is really loud, and that's the first sound that you hear. It's called the systolic blood pressure. That's the first number, the top number, right? People will say, they give you numbers like 120 over 80 or 140 over 90, but basically the first number is that it's the pressure that where it's the greatest. It's the pressure when the heart's contracting. And then as you're listening to that sound, you hear the first sound. That's the systolic pressure. But then all of a sudden the sounds get softer into nothing, and then that's the diastolic. That's the pressure, the lowest pressure with the arteries where the heart's relaxing, and that flow then becomes where you can't hear it. So those are the two sounds: systolic pressure, diastolic. Systolic is the top number. Diastolic is the bottom number when you're talking
I
about blood pressure.
I have never had it explained that way. That's fascinating. I really had no
It,
idea what all kind of was going in. going in with that because, the doctor might say, oh, you're 110/80 or,
You're right.
112, whatever. And there have been times when I've said, is that good?
Yeah, exactly.
Or is that
Because
bad? Did I pass? Did I
exactly, because
fail?
what that really means, Michelle, is that it's the heart. If the pressure in your vessels are so great that it makes the heart work harder, and so the heart has to work harder. And some points, it can actually lead to your heart getting larger and being enlarged and lead to heart failure because your heart's having to work so darn hard. And now. I don't know if you saw the statistic, but almost like 50% of Americans have high blood pressure, or what they call hypertension.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And one of the reasons is they've lowered the standards. I don't know if you know that,
They did.
but now it's like, the normal blood pressure is 120, it's systolic blood pressure over or under 80 diastolic. And so it used to be, hypertension was set at 140 over 90, but now it's like anything over 120 is considered to be hypertensive, just level 1. And so it's really new news for people.
Yep.
And it's just, again, important to really pay attention to that. And people can buy cuffs to use at home and just get them tested. Getting their blood pressure tested regularly is important.
So when we talk about then having high blood pressure, um, eh, then oftentimes that introduces medicines
Right.
to lower it. Is there a way, we hear so much about diet and exercise and how that plays into everything.
Sure.
Is it possible to lower your blood pressure with diet and exercise? Or no, really, in this instance, some type of medical, um, chemical,
Yeah.
pharmaceutical
Yeah.
is really your better bet here?
Well, and here's the thing, everybody's different. So a lot
Oh,
of
well, then
people,
there's that.
yeah, everybody's different because a lot of people, it is a genetic thing,
Yeah.
and I know people, and you probably know people that have been on, they're athletes, but just their genetics was such that they were on blood pressure medicine at a really young age, 18, 19 years old. And I've tested some of my students in class. They didn't even know they had high blood pressure till we were just playing in class and testing their pressure. And it's like, you need to go get this checked. Sure enough, they had high blood pressure. So genetics is a factor. But again, some of the other things you mentioned, diet and exercise are the easiest way to control blood pressure and improve it. We're talking about limiting the salt that you consume. Because think about that. If you're eating excess salt in your diet, that's going to get into your bloodstream. And what does salt do? It pulls that fluid with it. So that increases the amount of fluids you have in your blood, increases the amount of blood you have, and that's going to increase the pressure. So.
What are some questions that we need to ask our providers? We're starting a new year. Everybody's going to eventually have wellness exams and physicals that they'll need to do, and they will be getting their blood pressure checked.
Right.
How do you have that conversation? What do you ask when that nurse comes back and says, "Ooh," or rattles off a number?
Yeah. No, I mean, you definitely want to understand your numbers and just know that blood pressure, is really reactive. And a lot of people have what they call white coat syndrome. So just by
Yeah,
walking into the doctor's office, their blood pressure increases.
yeah.
Stress increases blood pressure. And so controlling your stress is going to be a thing too that I think most people will want to get a handle on because that will definitely affect your pressure. But so when you diagnose high blood pressure, you don't do it usually with one like measurement. Usually do it at least twice, and to make sure, and you don't do it in a situation that's really high stress. So just know that. But other than that, eating a healthful diet, making sure you're getting more vegetables on your plate, making sure you're limiting the amount of salt and caffeine that you consume, because caffeine's another one that will increase your blood pressure, or smoking obviously will do that as well. So there are a lot of things we can do and questions we can ask. So if you are a smoker, how do you work with your doctor to get on some plan for smoking cessation? Or if you are a caffeineaholic like some of us are, let's try to work to decrease that caffeine intake. But blood pressure really is called the silent killer for a reason, because you don't, it's one of the things that creeps up on you. You don't realize it unless you check it. And so I
Yeah.
think doing that regular checkup is important.
Anything else we need to know as it relates to blood pressure?
No, I hope this has helped people. And again, knowing your numbers, not just with your pressure, but with all of your tests that you do when you go have your annual physical is important. So, yep.
Okay. All right, JJ, thank you so much for joining us today. That is very important information, and probably all of us now will no longer confuse systolic from diastolic. We know the
Yes.
difference now. We're listening for
Yes.
that
Yep.
sound. So,
Absolutely. Thank you.
JJ, thank you. And thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you back here next Wednesday for more AFMC TV.